I am Dr. Bernard N. Nathanson. I am personally responsible for over 75,000 abortions. This was the greatest mistake of my life, and legal abortion was the greatest mistake this nation has ever conceived.
Hi, I'm Father Michael Orsi. I am your host for Action for Life Television, that good news program which brings you the big G for the gospel of Jesus Christ and the little g, all the good things that people do to put that gospel of life into action. Hey, gang, today we're going to talk about, you heard about Dr. Bernard Nathanson. Now, he's rather famous, but maybe some of you don't know of him, but this man is like unbelievable because Dr. Nathanson at one point in his life was a big time abortionist. And he had some kind of a conversion experience. We're going to have our guest today talk about the conversion experience. And then our guest today is going to talk to us about how she is carrying on his legacy, how she's carrying on his legacy. And, I'm just delighted today to have Terry Beatley on the show. And Terry, welcome. Tell us about Dr. Nathanson. How did you pick up the mantle of Dr. Nathanson? And tell us about how you did it and then how he had this conversion experience.
Well, I never set out to pick up that mantle. I was at a prayer vigil at my church back in 2009 and asking the Lord fervently what he wanted me to do with all of this research, learning the history of Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger, Black genocide, and really how, abortion had been sold onto America. And all I could hear back was go interview Dr. Bernard Nathanson. And I sat in that little prayer vigil room, and I remember looking up at the ceiling like I was talking to the Lord. I was talking to the Lord. And I was saying, Lord, why would Dr. Nathanson say yes to my request for an interview? And it was just silence. And Father, I knew I was supposed to try to get the interview. Mm-hmm. I did not think it would happen at all. So a good pro-life attorney friend of mine gave me his telephone number, and I called up to his home, which was in Manhattan, New York, and his wife answered. And she said, Terry, my husband is 83 years old. He's terminally ill with cancer. He's very frail, and he has not granted an interview in well over a year. She said, all I can tell you to do is put your request in writing, fax it up here to me, and I will present that to my husband. And so I wrote a simple little letter, which ended up going, there's a copy of it in the book. And I prayed over it and faxed it up to New York. And she called me back a couple days later. This is in November of 2009. Mm-hmm. And she said, to her amazement, Dr. Nathanson said yes. And she asked me if I could fly up on December 1st. Mm-hmm. This is 2009. And I want to say this now because I'll probably forget to say it later on. That date, we serve a God of order, not a God of consequences. I'm sure you'll agree with that. Mm-hmm. Well, December 1st, 2009 was exactly 12 years to the day before the Supreme Court heard the Dobbs case, which overturned the Roe v. Wade decision. Mm-hmm. So 12 years to the day, I'm sitting up in New York, and I had this 1-hour interview with Dr. Nathanson, and he was very, very frail. And just really suffered from anxiety, and his hands would shake. And I felt such sorrow for him, empathy. And at the end of the interview, and I didn't go up there for this, I didn't have this question written down, but at the end of the interview, I said, Dr. Nathanson, I know you're too sick to get your message out anymore. If you have a message for America, and if you tell me what it is, I promise you I'll deliver it across our country until Roe v. Wade's overturned, or it becomes common knowledge. And I didn't know what he would say. I was really thinking he wouldn't tell me anything at all. But he did. He said, yes. He said, teach the strategy of how I deceived America. And it's basically an 8-point strategy.
So he wanted you, like, this is like, Elijah and Elisha. He passed on the mantle to you. You are carrying on the legacy, and he wants to tell you how, I guess, he got hooked into being an abortionist, correct?
Well, yeah, not only how he got hooked into being an abortionist, but what he did to deceive America. And then, the second part of his message, so it started with teach the strategy of how I deceived America. But he didn't stop there. He said, and then tell Americans that the co-founder of NARAL says to love one another. Abortion's not love. Stop the killing. The world needs more love.
So I want to ask you this. He was doing a lot of abortions. How many abortions did he claim to have done? Huge.
Yeah, well, I knew it, but I specifically asked him that day. And I think this is really important for your audience to know, because I would beg to differ on one thing that you shared right in the beginning. You and I know who Nathanson was. All the bishops in America know who Nathanson was. But after, with the nonprofit they have, we've taught thousands of people, surveyed hundreds, and this is what we've discovered, is it's the greatest unknown pro-life conversion story and the greatest unknown Catholic conversion story. Bishops know it, a handful of priests know it, some old-timer pro-lifers know it, but the average American and the average pro-life frontline activists, I'm talking 93 to 95% of them, do not know who Nathanson was.
Folks, do you hear this? Most people don't know this, but now you are going to know this. That's why this program is so unique. You find out things that you never even thunk of. How's that? All right, so he's a big abortionist, big time. And something happened. What changed his mind?
Well, I want to add one more thing, because if we just sweep him under the rug as he was a big abortionist, no, he's the father of the abortion industry. When he co-founded NARAL, Pro-Choice America, with Lawrence Lader, they sat in New York City in 1968 and 1969 coming up with these slogans. And the 8-point strategy, which we cover in this little booklet called America's Abortion King, his journey from deceit to divine mercy. So he's not just one more abortionist. He was known as America's Abortion King. And it's like, wait a minute, if America's Abortion King can become 100% unequivocally pro-life and Catholic, isn't that a story that at least every Catholic, if not every single American, ought to know?
Okay, tell us what happened. We are waiting with bated breath. What happened? How did it happen?
Okay, so to answer your question, he was personally responsible for 75,000 baby deaths. He personally killed 5,000 babies. He taught doctors how to kill on another 10,000 babies. And then he ran the Western Hemisphere's largest abortion mill. And he was a manager for another 60,000. So I asked him that day, how many babies are you responsible for? And he said 75,000 deaths, plus his lies skidded the road for the Roe v. Wade decision. Okay, so that's that. Then what changed him is he celebrated Roe v. Wade in January 73, the Roe v. Wade decision, but about 6 months or so later, he was now chief of obstetrics at St. Luke's Hospital in New York City.
Oh, I know it well. I know it well.
Well, I can hear that accent. And so, but he was birthing babies on one floor, aborting babies on another floor, and the hospital rolls in a brand new technology called real-time ultrasound. And what the average American, what we can tell, about 93 to 95% of Americans have no clue that the father of America, the industry of abortion in America, became pro-life as an atheist because of what the science revealed.
Follow the science. Follow the science. You see, folks, science proves that there is a baby there, and that ultrasound, holy cow, it's a fantastic instrument. Fantastic.
But when I sit back and I think that, oh my gosh, the founder of NARAL, co-founder of NARAL, who trained Planned Parenthood. He begged Planned Parenthood to join with NARAL in New York to try to overturn a 140-year-old pro-life law in New York. Planned Parenthood in January 1970 refused to join with Dr. Nathanson and try to get abortion legalized until it became legal. And then who did Planned Parenthood call to train their doctors on how to kill? They called Dr. Bernard Nathanson. And for the next 2 years, he trained Planned Parenthood doctors who took copious notes. And then the father of the abortion industry converts to the pro-life side. And America doesn't know. So all I can think is when he died February 2011, my guess is, I have no proof for this, but my guess is NARAL probably celebrated, right? That yes, the last surviving co-founder of NARAL is dead and gone, the one who could cause the worst damage to the abortion industry in our nation. But they didn't realize that I had made him a promise to teach America what he wanted every American to know.
All right, here we go, folks. We want you to listen now to how Dr. Nathanson deceived America and how he now tells us we have to be very careful for these nefarious techniques that live on in our society, that live on in a certain political administration in Washington, and that live on in Planned Parenthood. Am I being politically correct? Well, please go on, Terry. Tell us, what he passed on to you.
I think you're being very politically correct.
I am very politically correct.
No, we have a job to do in the body of Christ, most particularly, but keep in mind, he became pro-life as an atheist.
Hey, this even gets better, folks. Even gets better. Even the atheists know a baby's a baby. How do you like that?
That's a really valid point to make, that it doesn't require being a Christian to be pro-life. And I want to share something that when I sat with Dr. Nathanson for that hour, he really made it a point. And I misunderstood it in the beginning. I thought he was sort of being prideful that, I became pro-life and it didn't have to do with God. But that's not what he was actually stressing. Because he knew what we were going into, this age of science, and now we're being mandated to follow the science. Well, I want to tell, say, President Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi, all right, everybody says follow the science. Let's follow that science because it led the father of America's industry of abortion to become 100% unequivocally pro-life, period. So,
all right. Tell us now the 8 parents. The 8 parents.
Yeah,
folks, you ever watch The Honeymooners? You know how they talk? They talk like guys from Brooklyn, like me. Let's get to the main parents.
All right. So I'm going to hold this up, but every American, every one of your listeners needs to go to Jose Initiative, and if not order 1, order 20, order 50, order a case, and it's of this fact check booklet. Okay. And it's called America's Abortion King: His Journey from Deceit to Divine Mercy. And also get the big book called What If We've Been Wrong? And between those two things, you will have the back history of how we went down the slippery slope and how the father of the abortion industry did a 180. So I'm going to run through these real quick, but the booklet and the big book flushes it out in great detail. First thing they did was they framed the debate around choice. Okay, we all know choices. Americans love choices. Just think about how many types of orange juice there are at the grocery store, right? We love choices.
Oh, choice is great. Go down the aisle, folks. Look at all the different kinds of cereal you have. I mean, you don't know which one to pick, but we like our choices. That's Brooklynese too. Okay, so choice. I mean, it all sounds good. These euphemisms all sound good. Okay, go ahead.
They framed it around choice. And they would never finish the sentence, a woman's right to choose to kill her baby. No, they never said that. It's just a woman's right to choose.
That's it, yeah.
Second part is they crafted the slogans, my body, my choice. It's a personal decision, a decision between a woman and her doctor. They came up with all this. And Nathanson and Lawrence later would laugh. They were almost giddy over which slogan would catch on first all across the nation, So they crafted the slogans. The third thing they would do is they manipulated and used the media. Now, Lawrence later asked Dr. Nathanson to become the medical director of NARAL, the medical spokesman. They needed a Fauci, a Dr. Nathanson in a white lab coat, standing in front of the microphones, telling America a bunch of lies.
As you can imagine, producing this wonderful program, Action for Life, it costs a great deal of money. We're going to need your help. So if you would like to donate to keep this good news program on the air, please go to your computer, your cell phone, actionforlife.net. Hey gang, I know a lot of you sometimes can't watch all of our episodes of Action for Life. However, we have a solution for that. All you have to do is go to YouTube and search for Action for Life Florida. And you can catch up on all the shows, and guess what? Extra added bonus, you get to hear my weekly homily. So, YouTube and you make a fine couple. Thought for the day. I hope that all of you belong to a Christian community. Going to church is extremely important. Why? Because we need the support of other people in order for us to live a good Christian life. Christianity is a community religion. Please worship in your church this weekend. So they use like Madison Avenue techniques. Is there still a lot of advertising going on Madison Avenue? I don't know, folks, but you see what they did. This is like, way back at the beginning of, that the horrendous Roe v. Wade and all that stuff. So they use the media, they use advertising, and I think the churches were a little bit slow in that area. I mean, if you just see me on TV saying it's bad, well, I suppose I'm not as good as all the advertisers on Madison Avenue, but I guess you would disagree. I'm even better. Go ahead.
No, you're better.
Go.
So here's Nathanson with his white lab coat on. He would manipulate the media. Most of the reporters covering this issue were young females. Most of them had just graduated from liberal universities. They were already indoctrinated into my body, my choice. Well, he could tell these young female reporters almost anything, and they would report it back as fact. And they would hardly ever query him or question what he was telling them. So what would he tell them? That's point number 4. He would fabricate the facts. And this is huge. If anybody can take notes, or we want them to get a fact check booklet, so you have this, so you too can be teaching Americans. I can't teach everybody myself, but if you get our tools, you too can be an effective teacher and begin to change hearts and minds. So
see, folks, we're going to show you how to get the tools that you need. Okay, continue.
All right, so here's the shocker, the audaciousness of his lies. So he would tell the reporters that 1 million women a year were having illegal abortions, and 5,000 to 10,000 women a year were dying due to complications of illegal abortion. So intuitively, you would think, it may sound crass, but it's to drive the point home, that you'd think you'd be finding a dead woman up every alley across America. 10,000 women were dying due to complications of illegal abortion. No, we didn't find all those women because it wasn't even happening.
Yeah.
The real number of illegal abortions was in the neighborhood of around 98 to 100,000, not 1 million. And there were never never 5,000 to 10,000 women a year dying due to illegal abortions. The real number on the high side was around 200, and there were other years, and which is much more common, to be in the single or double digits. And I believe the year before Roe v. Wade, 65 women died due to complications. I believe that was the year either of, or yeah, the year before. So, but never 5,000 to 10,000 women.
But, you know, I remember they would paint these horror stories, you know, like back alley abortions, using a hanger. I mean, it was like graphic and horrible.
That's right. That's right. And Nathanson hired a public relations New York advertising firm to help them develop this campaign, because they recognize that Americans love privacy, we love our independence, but they also knew Americans are very compassionate. So if they could lie to us enough and make us think that everybody wants abortion legal, and that we've got to stop 10,000 women dying at the hands of illegal abortion, you know, that they'd have us. And it worked. So the other thing that the public relations firm told Dr. Nathanson and Lawrence later was that they needed to be able to quote polling statistics. And so when I sat with Nathanson, I said, where did you get the 60% number, that 60% of Americans want abortion on demand legalized? And I'll never forget it, Father. He clenched his fist, he held up his hand, he pulled it down out of thin air. And he said, I pulled it out of thin air. Because we knew it was only like 0.1% of Americans wanted abortion on demand legalized, 0.1%. But the PR firm said that if you're going to start a revolution, you better be quoting polling statistics over 50%, because the PR firm knew that nobody likes to be per se in a minority. So Nathanson said, I just chose 60% randomly, when the real number, I want to repeat it because it's so crazy, was only 0.1% of Americans.
This is Goebbels, folks. This is Goebbels in Nazi Germany. You know, you lie big enough, people begin to believe it. You repeat it over and over and over again. There's no evidence for it, but we believed it. Well, not moi. I mean, I didn't believe it, but I mean, a lot of the country fell into this. Okay, next point.
Yes, sir. Well, now we're down on 7 and 8. The 7, that's pretty quick. No, sorry. Point number 6, he would repeat the lies over and over. And we know that if you repeat them long enough in the media, it begins to sound like the truth. Point number 7 would justify decriminalizing abortion. He would say, look, we just need to make it legal so that the doctors are not felons and the women are not committing, some felony, because they're going to do it anyway. Well, that's a lie, because we all know that if you legalize something, it's going to drive the demand up. Right? So it became the self-fulfilling lie. So within a relatively short period of time, by the time we had Roe v. Wade, I think it was by the, I think it was like early 80s, mid 80s. Now we really were killing 1 to 1.5 million American babies every year. So the lie that Nathanson spoke years earlier became the self-fulfilling lie once it became legalized. Oh, and then the 8th point is called the Catholic strategy. I don't think we have time. I give 45, 55-minute seminars just on the Catholic strategy, but and I'm happy to do another interview, and all we do is go over the Catholic strategy. But just know that the Catholic strategy was, NARAL knew that they had a problem on their hand, because keep in mind, they first launched NARAL in New York to overturn a 140-year-old pro-life law. And NARAL knew that New York had lots of Catholics, and lots of those Catholics would never support abortion. So they had to come up with a political strategy. Dr. Nathanson called this, Father, the most brilliant political strategy of all time, to separate Catholics' religious conviction from their legislative judgment.
Oh, yeah. That's that guy Cuomo out of Notre Dame. Personally, I'm against it. But, and this has filtered down to the present day, with Biden and Pelosi and all those other. All right, I can't say it on TV. Go ahead.
Well, and I'll just scratch the surface. What you just named was called the straddle. That's 1 out of 4 components of the Catholic strategy. So the Catholic strategy had 4 parts, and we call it BSSS. First, they blamed the bishops and all the Catholic leadership. They blamed the local priests like you. Anytime a woman did die of or was maimed drastically from a illegal abortion complications. Number two, they would support Catholic legislators. Didn't matter if they were Democrat, Republican, Green Party, Purple Party. It made no difference. As long as they would advance abortion, NARAL would support that Catholic candidate or politician. Third, they would then split. And I know this is going to resonate with you because you lived right through and you remember it. So John F. Kennedy was our first Catholic president. And he did a great job, letting everybody know that he was going to keep his distance between his personal beliefs and this Catholic faith.
Yeah, he gave that speech to the Houston ministerial movement, promising them his faith would have no influence on his presidency.
And so these two atheist Jewish men running NARAL realized that there was a division in the Catholic Church after Humana Vitae and with the birth control pill. They knew enough Catholics were contracepting, and they knew that they didn't have wiggle room. And so NARAL figured out a way to be able to divide, split Catholics and pit the more Kennedy enlightened Catholics against the more Orthodox Catholics. And in Nathanson's own words, they use Catholics to advance abortion onto America. But then what do you do with the Catholic politicians and those voters? Because NARAL knew once they overturned that law, they got their victory in April 1970. New York became one of the most aggressive pro-abortion states in the nation.
Under a Catholic governor named Hugh Carey. How do you like that, folks? I remember.
Well, all my reading is it was Rockefeller who signed it into law.
Yeah, but Hugh Carey was a Catholic governor that supported it.
Oh, governor. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, so what they did, they devised this Catholic strategy, which everybody knows what it is. Oh, Mr. and Mrs. Catholic, you can remain personally against abortion, but everybody deserves the right to make their own decisions.
You see, folks, you see how nefarious, how evil just seeps in, how it distorts people's minds, how their reasoning is perverted. This is what happened. Now, we can go on and on with this conversation. Maybe we'll have to have Terry back someday, but you're going to be able to get, the books that she's published and learn how to put the truth forward and to avoid the lies. Satan, the father of lies, the prince of darkness. Hey, gang, look, Terry's for action. I'm for action, and I hope you are too. We would like to thank our generous sponsors for their wonderful support. Thanks for watching. Please join us next time for Action for Life. I'm for action, and I hope you are too. I'm Father Michael Orsi. I am your host for Action for Life Television, that good news program which talks about the gospel of Jesus Christ, the big G, and the little g, all the good things that people are doing to put the gospel of life into action. So please join us for the next episode of Action for Life.